Welcome to China's Living Legends.
欢迎来到我的频道。
When you hear the name Renjie, what comes to mind? For a lot of us, it's probably, this image of a brilliant ancient Chinese detective.
Right, like a master investigator solving intricate mysteries in the Tang Dynasty. Maybe even a kind of Chinese Sherlock Holmes.
Exactly. But what if the real person, the historical figure, was something else entirely? What if he was, well, a powerful statesman, a sharp political player?
And what if his fame as a detective actually came about centuries later through this really unexpected, almost roundabout global journey? It's quite the story.
It really is. The historical records, they paint a very different picture from the pop culture version we might know.
Yeah, the Judge D you see in films or read about, largely a later invention, not the man himself. So our deep dive today is all about peeling back those layers.
We're going to look at his quite formidable career as a Confucian official first, then his really shrewd political maneuvering in Empress Wu Zetian's court, which was notoriously dangerous.
And finally, the fascinating bit, how this historical figure somehow morphed into this universally recognized famous detective. It's a surprising transformation.
Our mission really is to understand the man behind the myth, the legend itself, and, the surprising forces that shaped how we see him today.
So get ready to maybe challenge some assumptions about historical truth and see the incredible power storytelling has, especially across cultures and time.
Okay, let's dive in. Let's go back to the Tang Dynasty. Meet the real Renjie. Where did he start?
Well, his official career kicked off during Emperor Gaozong's reign. He became a Dali Chang. Think of it as a senior judicial officer.
Within the Dali Temple, right, which was like the Supreme Court.
Exactly, the highest judicial body. And this is where he first made a massive impact. Get this. In just one single year, he cleared something like 17,000 pending cases. Long pending cases.
17,000, that's astonishing.
It is. But here's the really crucial part. Apparently, no one appealed. No one cried out claiming injustice.
Wow, so it wasn't just speed, it was fairness. Real skill.
Absolutely. A judicial powerhouse. That's the reputation he built early on. Not a detective, but a supremely effective and fair legal administrator.
Okay, 17,000 cases, 0 appeals. That tells you something about his commitment, doesn't it? What was driving him?
It speaks volumes about his focus on public service. Historically, he's seen as a pretty typical Confucian official in that sense, always putting the people's livelihood first.
So practical concerns over grandeur.
Definitely. There are records of him arguing against these huge, wasteful court construction projects. He knew they burdened ordinary people. His focus was internal stability, the people's welfare.
That practicality, that focus on reason, it even led him to challenge some pretty deep-seated beliefs, didn't it? The temple thing.
Oh, yeah. That was bold. As inspector of Jianyan, he apparently ordered the demolition of around 1,700 local ancestral temples.
1,700? I mean, can you imagine the reaction? That must have caused quite a stir. He sounds like a one-man wrecking crew against superstition.
It does sound dramatic, but it was probably very strategic. He wasn't just smashing things randomly. He specifically spared a few temples.
Which ones?
Temples dedicated to figures like Yu the Great, Taibo, Jiza, Wu Zixu, basically. Figures seen as positive role models in Confucian classics and official histories.
Ah, okay. So it wasn't anti-religion. It was promoting a specific state-approved rational value system over, I guess, local folk beliefs?
Precisely. It was about rational governance, reinforcing established values, not just blind destruction. Very calculated.
And this rational approach extended even to something as big as border security. I heard he had some pretty radical ideas there.
He did. He suggested giving up some distant territories like the 4 garrisons of Anxi and the Andong Protectorate.
Giving up territory, that sounds like the opposite of what you'd expect from an imperial official.
It does seem counterintuitive, right? Right. But it connects directly back to his focus on the people's welfare. His argument was basically that holding on to these far-flung places costs too much in resources and in human suffering. He even proposed helping restore the king of Goguryeo, possibly aiming for peace through less direct control.
So internal stability over external expansion. Put the people first, even if it means shrinking the borders a bit.
That's the core idea, the insight of a pragmatic Confucian official. People before conquest, you might say.
Okay, so we have this picture now. A principled man, decisive, an incredible judicial administrator focused on public service and rational governance, a far cry from solving murders.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This makes me wonder, how did this guy survive, let alone thrive, in the incredibly dangerous court of Empress Wu Zetian?
Yeah, that era was notorious for backstabbing and purges. Integrity alone probably wasn't enough, was it?
Definitely not. You needed serious political savvy. Cunning, even, alongside the integrity.
Right, and there's that famous incident in 692 AD that really shows this side of him.
Ah, yes, with Lai Yongxin, a notoriously cruel official. He falsely accused Renjie and some other ministers of treason.
A death sentence, basically. They were arrested, thrown in prison. Things looked grim. But this is where Renjie's quick thinking shines.
He knew the system. There was a rule, apparently, that if you confessed during the first interrogation, a death sentence might be reduced.
So he confessed. Immediately.
Yep. Reportedly said something like, "The great Zhu has undergone a revolution. I am willing to be executed. The treason is true."
Wow. He just admitted it, even though it was false.
It was brilliant, in a way. It stopped the interrogation, prevented torture, which is standard practice to extract confessions, and brought him time. He disarmed them by agreeing immediately.
That's incredibly clever under pressure. But he didn't just stop there, did he? The quilt story.
Right, the quilt letter. He supposedly borrowed writing materials, tore a piece from his quilt lining, wrote out his grievances, his side of the story.
And then stuffed it back into his cotton-padded clothes. Genius. But how did he get it out?
He made a very reasonable request to the prison guard. Said it was getting hot. Could he send his padded clothes home to have the extra lining removed?
Huh. So simple, so clever. The guard wouldn't suspect a thing.
Exactly. The clothes went home, his son found the hidden message, and immediately appealed to Empress Wu Zetian herself. He bypassed the whole corrupt apparatus below her.
So he used the system and a bit of subterfuge to get his message to the top. What happened when Wu Zetian found out?
Well, she questioned him later, asked why he confessed if he wasn't actually rebelling. His answer was brutally honest. "If I hadn't admitted to rebellion, I would have already died from torture."
It really shows the tightrope these officials walked. So what was Wu Zetian's angle in all this? Did she believe the charges?
It's unlikely she ever truly intended to kill Renjie. He had a strong reputation. It was more likely, historians think, a political maneuver on her part.
Like using the situation to send a message?
Exactly. The classic, kill the chicken to scare the monkey. Punish one high-profile group, even if leniently in the end, to warn everyone else. Renjie's cunning confession almost cooperated with her plan, allowing her to look reasonable while still flexing her power.
That's a complex dance. He survives. She maintains control and looks somewhat merciful. A political masterclass on both sides.
Absolutely. And Renjie didn't just survive, he bounced back. He returned to court, eventually becoming a chancellor. It shows his incredible resilience and political skill. His political IQ was, off the charts.
And he wasn't just surviving, he was advising her on really sensitive stuff, like who should succeed her. That takes immense trust and careful diplomacy.
He had an exceptional ability to frame his advice in ways that aligned with her own thoughts, or gently guided them. The succession issue is a prime example.
There's that story about her dream, right? The parrot.
Yes, the big parrot with both wings broken.
Yeah.
Wu Zetian supposedly had this dream and asked for interpretations.
And Renjie saw an opening.
A brilliant one. He interpreted it very astutely. He said something like, "Wu is your majesty's surname and the two wings. They refer to your two sons." A subtle push towards her own Li family heirs, not her Wu clan nephews.
Very clever. Using her own surname, connecting it to her sons. Did he add more arguments?
Oh, yes. He hit her with a powerful two-pronged argument. First, he reminded her that the previous emperors, Taizong and Gaozong, had entrusted their sons to her care. Why betray that trust and hand the empire to people with different surnames, meaning her nephews?
Appealing to duty and legacy, what was the second part?
Even more powerful personally, the ancestral temple argument. He asked point blank, who's closer, an aunt and nephew or a mother and son?
Oof, that's direct.
And then the clincher. I've never heard of an aunt being enshrined to the ancestral temple of her nephew. This hit right at her desire for lasting reverence and legacy. Where would she fit in if her nephews took over? Legacy over lineage, essentially.
That's incredibly persuasive. How did she react? Did she try to brush it off?
She apparently tried to dismiss it initially, saying it was just a family matter.
Which is ironic, given how she blurred family and state herself.
Right. But Renjie didn't back down. He countered. A king regards the four seas as his home. All state affairs are your majesty's family matters. As chancellor, how can I not be concerned? He basically invoked the idea that for the ruler, the family is the state.
Wow. He really held his ground, and it worked.
It did. Wu Zetian was convinced. She eventually restored her son, the Prince of Luling, as crown prince. A pivotal moment for the Tang Dynasty's future, largely thanks to Renjie's influence.
His impact just keeps growing, and it didn't stop there, did it? He had an eye for talent, too.
Yes, he was known for recommending capable people. One key recommendation was a man named Zhang Jianzi.
And why was he important?
Zhang Jianzi later became a leader in the Shenlong coup. This was the event that ultimately forced Wu Zetian to abdicate and restore the Li family, the Tang Dynasty proper.
So even after Renjie had passed away, his judgment, his recommendations were still shaping events.
Exactly. It ensured that future Tang emperors remembered him favorably. His positive historical reputation was cemented. Any minor negative accounts, like some later mentions of greed, were largely overshadowed. His political foresight ensured his legacy.
Okay, so now we have Renjie, the brilliant administrator, and Renjie, the master politician and strategist, an incredibly influential figure in his own right.
A true force in the Tang court. A political genius, really, who knew how to blend integrity with shrewd survival instincts.
Which brings us back to the big question. How on earth does this guy, this statesman, this courtier, become known worldwide as a detective?
Right. It seems like a total mismatch. Well, this is where the story takes another fascinating and much later turn. It starts with a Chinese literary tradition called gongyan.
Gongyan meaning public case stories.
Exactly. These tales about wise officials solving crimes were popular way back in the Song and Yuan dynasties, mostly as short stories or parts of larger works. They really flourished in the Ming Dynasty.
But the idea of a single official as the main character, solving multiple cases in a full-length novel, that came later.
Much later. That format didn't really take off until the late Qing Dynasty, specifically the Guangxu period, so we're talking roughly 1875 to 1908, centuries after Renjie lived.
What caused that boom then?
Technology, actually. The introduction of Western lithography printing. Suddenly, printing books became much cheaper.
Ah, so books became accessible to more people, not just the elite.
Precisely. A wider, non-intellectual readership emerged. Booksellers saw an opportunity and started printing these popular stories that had previously circulated orally through storytelling, drum lyrics, operas.
And they just grabbed famous historical officials to be the heroes? Accuracy wasn't a concern.
Not at all. Historical reliability was not a priority. They drafted figures like the famous Judge Bao, Hairui, Shishilun, Pang Peng, and Renjie.
Even though none of them were actually famous historically for solving crimes?
Correct. It was pure storytelling license. And interestingly, the Digong An, the Judge D stories, weren't even the most popular ones in China at the time. Books about Shishilun or Peng Peng were often bigger hits. History was just a suggestion, really.
So Renjie was just one of many fictionalized historical detectives in China, and not even the top one. How did he break out globally?
Well, there was another factor. In the early 20th century, these traditional Chinese Gongan stories were actually losing ground domestically.
To what?
Western detective novels.
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes arrived in China as early as 1896 and was hugely popular. Some prominent Chinese intellectuals even looked down on the local Gongan's tales, seeing them as, unsophisticated compared to Conan Doyle.
Okay, so local detective stories are struggling. Renjie isn't even the main star among them. Then what happened?
Then comes the unlikely catalyst. A Dutchman named Robert van Gulik.
The diplomat.
That's him. A diplomat, but also a serious scholar, an amateur sonologist, fluent in something like 15 languages, and deeply fascinated by China.
What did he do?
In 1949, he found an 18th century Chinese Gong novel called Wu Zetian Sida Qian. He translated the first 30 chapters into English and published it as Celebrated Cases of Judge D.
Okay, so he translated an existing story.
He did. But then, and this is the crucial step, he started writing his own completely original Judge D mystery novels in English. He took the character and ran with it. He didn't just translate, he transfigured the character.
So the Judge D most Westerners know isn't just translated. It's largely Van Gulik's creation, based on but different from the Chinese source.
Very different. Van Gulik himself admitted his versions were very unfaithful to the original. He deliberately adapted them, changed plots, added elements, basically reshaped everything to appeal to Western readers' tastes. It was a significant reimagining.
And did it work?
Oh, spectacularly. His Judge D novels were hugely successful worldwide. They basically introduced Renjie the detective to an international audience and made him famous. They also gave Chinese Gongan fiction a global profile it never had before.
That's incredible. So A Dutch diplomat repackaging an obscure Chinese character for Western tastes is what created the global icon.
Pretty much. And here's a final twist. Van Gulik's popular westernized versions were eventually translated back into Chinese.
No way. How were they received?
Interestingly, many Chinese readers, whose tastes had also been influenced by Western fiction by then, actually found Van Gulik's adaptations more engaging than the older original Chinese Gongan stories. Culture, re-imported, you could say.
Wow. The whole story is a pretzel of cultural exchange, so that explains the modern films and TV shows. They're building on Van Gulik's legacy.
Largely, yes. Though contemporary Chinese productions often try to blend the detective element with more historical context and political depth, reflecting perhaps a more historically aware modern audience in China.
But Renjie has that built-in advantage for global productions, right? Because of Van Gulik.
Absolutely. He already had a massive head start in the West. Producers looking for a Chinese historical figure with international name recognition. Renjie, thanks to Van Gulik, was the obvious choice over other figures unknown outside China. He was effectively pre-marketed.
So the famous detective we picture, he's really a product of centuries of storytelling, capped off by a brilliant act of cross-cultural adaptation and recreation.
It's a powerful testament to how narratives evolve, get reinterpreted, and take on lives of their own, often far removed from the original history. Identity is flexible.
What an incredible journey we've covered. Renjie's life, or maybe lives, plural. We started with the real man.
The brilliant Confucian official, the judicial prodigy handling 17,000 cases fairly, focused entirely on good governance and the people's welfare.
Then we saw the shrewd political operator navigating the deadly currents of Wu Zetian's court with astonishing cunning and strategic thinking.
Influencing succession, ensuring his legacy, recommending people who would restore the Tang Dynasty. A master of political theater, almost Machiavellian in his effectiveness.
And finally, the most unexpected turn. His posthumous transformation into a world-famous detective. A role created centuries later, born from Chinese folk stories, but launched globally by a Dutch diplomat's imagination.
His story really shows how historical figures get reshaped, redefined by later eras, different cultures, new storytelling needs. History is written by the living, but reimagined by the curious, perhaps.
It makes you think, doesn't it? As we wrap this up, consider this. How many other historical figures do we think we know, whose popular image might be wildly different from their actual life, shaped by centuries of stories we barely know about?
And what does that tell us about the sheer power of storytelling, especially when it crosses borders? Its power to shape memory, define identity, maybe even invent entirely new legacies out of old cloth. Something to definitely ponder.
All right, get ready for a story that's way more than just some detective tale. We're talking about Renjie.
Renjie.
This legendary figure from the Tang Dynasty. You probably know him as a brilliant crime solver, but what if I told you the real Renjie was even more fascinating than that?
That's the thing about Renjie, right? History celebrates him as this master detective.
Right.
But then when you actually look at the historical records, the details about his cases, they're surprisingly thin.
Really?
It's almost like we're missing half the story.
It's a bit of a letdown, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was expecting like some epic ancient cold cases with Renjie, like cracking codes and using all these crazy deduction techniques.
I know.
So how on earth did this image of him, like as a detective god, how did that even come about?
Well, I think to understand that, we have to think about the cultural context a little bit. Yeah. So during the Tang Dynasty, scholar officials, the folks who wrote history, they saw themselves as a cut above what they called the artisan class. So that would be craftsmen, artists, and yes, even detectives. So recording the methods of someone like a detective, even one as famous as Renjie, just wasn't something that they considered worthy of their time, you know?
It's funny how those perceptions of what's important to write down, like, shape how we see history,
Totally.
even centuries later.
Yeah.
But okay, let's ditch the myths for now and dig into the real Renjie. I guess for starters, there's a recent discovery about his ancestry that's kind of surprising.
Yeah, it turns out that Renjie wasn't completely Han Chinese, like most people believe.
Oh.
There have been some tombstones that have been found that actually reveal that his family were originally Qiang people.
Qiang people.
From the Hexi Corridor, so kind of around modern Gansu.
So he was part of a minority group that eventually integrated into Han Chinese culture.
Exactly. They migrated to Taiwan before Renjie's time and gradually became part of the Han Chinese world. And what's interesting is that this level of integration wasn't actually unusual in the Tang Dynasty. It was known for being super cosmopolitan. Yep. You know, people from all sorts of backgrounds mixing and mingling.
Yeah.
And that kind of open-minded approach was actually a big part of what made the dynasty's culture so rich.
Yeah.
And it helped their economic prosperity, too.
It's fascinating to think about how, like, individual stories like Renjie's kind of reflect these bigger historical trends.
Yeah.
And even from his early days, it seems like he was destined for great things. He was known for being really smart, bold, and he was known for his calligraphy skills as well.
He was.
Yeah.
There's even an account of Empress Wu Zetian, who was herself a really famous calligrapher, praising his work.
Wow.
Yeah, that's quite the endorsement, especially considering she was considered like one of the best of her time.
So he had the brains, the guts, the artistic talent.
Had it all.
Not a bad start at all. Let's trace how this all played out in his career. He started, like many officials did, in a fairly low-ranking position, but he climbed the ladder pretty quickly.
He did, and one of the key turning points was the Bianzhu incident.
Okay.
So Renjie was serving as a minor official when a petty official actually accused him of wrongdoing. It seemed like his career might be over.
So how did he get out of this mess?
Well, this is where we meet a really prominent figure, Jan Lippen. He was both a super famous painter and a very well-respected statesman. And he stepped in to review the case. And he quickly recognized Renjie's true character.
So Jan Lippen was sort of a Renaissance man.
Kind of, yeah.
A painter, politician, and talent scout all in one.
You could say that. He famously said of Renjie, "A pearl from the sea, a treasure left in the southeast."
Oh, wow.
He saw Renjie's potential, and he actually recommended him for a promotion to Bingzhou, which was a significant advancement.
Bingzhou was a pretty big deal back then, wasn't it?
It was. It held a lot of historical weight. Bingzhou, which is modern-day Taiwan, was where Emperor Gaozu of Tang had risen to power, essentially establishing the Tang Dynasty. Yeah. So it was a prestigious post for Renjie, basically putting him in charge of the judicial bureau for a major city.
So Bingzhou is where Renjie really started to make his mark, I guess, as a judicial expert. I imagine he was dealing with all sorts of cases, building up his reputation for being fair and insightful.
He was, absolutely. But beyond his legal expertise, what really set Renjie apart was his exceptional emotional intelligence.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't just about knowing the law. It was about understanding people, navigating complex situations, and he did it with a blend of wisdom and compassion.
Give us an example. What kind of situation showed that side of him?
Well, there's this story about one of Renjie's colleagues who was ordered to serve as an envoy abroad.
Okay.
Which was not an easy gig.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It could be dangerous.
Right.
And in this case, the colleague was dealing with a sick mother he didn't want to leave.
Right. That's a tough call. Duty versus family. What did Renjie do?
He stepped up and volunteered to take his colleague's place. He argued that his colleague should stay and care for his mother. And this selfless act didn't just help his colleague. It had an impact on their superiors, who were actually known for constantly bickering.
Oh.
But seeing Renjie's selflessness actually inspired them to reconcile and start working together more effectively.
Wow, talk about a positive ripple effect.
It really was.
He wasn't just brilliant. He was a genuinely good person.
Totally.
Who inspired those around him to be better.
Yeah. His time in Bingzhou really highlighted how his emotional intelligence made a positive impact, not just on individual cases, but, on the overall atmosphere and effectiveness of everyone around him.
And this didn't go unnoticed.
It didn't.
Eventually, he landed a major promotion to the Dali Temple in Chang'an. For those who aren't familiar with the Tang Dynasty bureaucracy, this was a really huge deal.
Huge deal, yeah. The Dali Temple was essentially the Supreme Court of the Tang Dynasty.
Okay.
And as deputy minister, Renjie was basically the second in command.
Wow.
A testament to his growing reputation and abilities.
And this is where things get really mind-blowing. It's said that during his time at the Dali Temple, he judged a staggering 17,800 cases in a single year.
It is said, yes.
I mean, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
Was he some sort of superhuman judge working around the clock?
Well, that number has been debated quite a bit, and some historians have questioned its accuracy. But it's important to remember that Renjie was leading a team of officials.
Yeah.
He wasn't single-handedly reviewing every single case.
So he was more like a general commanding an army. You don't expect the general to fight every battle personally, but they're responsible for the overall strategy and outcome.
Precisely. It's about leadership. It's about efficiency. Yeah. Renjie was clearly a skilled administrator,
Right.
a delegator.
Yeah.
Managing a massive workload and still ensuring justice was served.
Yeah.
But there was one particular case during his time at the Dali Temple that really cemented his reputation for being absolutely committed to the law, even when facing pressure from the emperor himself.
Sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
This case involved Quan Shankai, who was a high-ranking general who'd committed a serious offense. He cut down a cypress tree
Uh-oh.
at the Xiaoling Mausoleum, the tomb of Emperor Taizong,
Oh, no.
the current emperor's father.
Cutting down a tree at an emperor's tomb? That's got to be the big no-no. I bet Emperor Gazong was furious. What happened next?
Furious doesn't even begin to describe it. He demanded Quan Shankai's immediate execution.
Wow.
But Renjie, after carefully reviewing the case, argued that while Quan Shankai was definitely guilty,
Right.
the crime didn't actually warrant the death penalty,
Yeah.
according to the law.
So he stood up to the emperor. That took some serious guts.
He did.
What did he say?
He famously told the emperor, "A wise ruler can be persuaded by reason, but a loyal minister will not be intimidated."
Wow.
He even went so far as to compare the emperor to, like, legendary sage rulers Yao and Shun,
Oh, wow.
basically challenging him to live up to their high standards.
So he was putting his own neck on the line?
He was.
For what he believed was right. So did the emperor back down?
He did. Emperor Gaozong eventually rescinded his order.
Wow.
Quan Shankai was spared the death penalty.
Oh.
This incident really showcased Renjie's unwavering integrity and, his commitment to justice, even when facing that kind of pressure. It also marked the moment when Empress Wu Zetian first took notice of this very principled official.
Ah, Empress Wu. Now that's a whole other chapter in Tang Dynasty history.
Sure.
Her rise to power was full of intrigue and controversy. How did Renjie, a staunch Confucian official, manage to navigate those turbulent times, especially under someone like Wu Zetian?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Wu Zetian's reign was a period of, great upheaval,
Right.
marked by rebellions and constant political maneuvering. Renjie played a key role in handling the aftermath of these events,
Okay.
demonstrating both his loyalty and his ability to think practically and adapt to these complex situations.
For example, I read about the Shujinji rebellion, where Wu Zetian supposedly received the rebel leader's head, but there were rumors swirling that he had actually escaped.
Well,
Was Renjie involved in that whole mess?
absolutely. Wu Zetian, unsure if the head was really Shu Jingyi's, sent Renjie south to investigate.
Okay.
His mission was to uncover the truth and to, restore order in this region that was just full of rumors and unrest.
And wasn't there something about him abolishing a bunch of unauthorized sacrifices during this time?
Yes.
That seems like a risky move, meddling with people's religious beliefs.
Well, these weren't just any sacrifices. Renjie specifically targeted those dedicated to figures like Shang Yu,
Okay.
a historical figure who had rebelled against the Han Dynasty, centuries earlier.
Right.
So, by tearing down Shang Yu's ancestral hall, Renjie was making a statement about loyalty to the current regime.
Right.
And he was trying to kind of undercut any potential support for future rebellions.
It's like he was playing some multi-dimensional game of chess, tackling political intrigue,
Yeah.
religious sensitivities, maintaining order, and all while navigating this volatile, constantly shifting landscape. What a high-pressure job.
And it didn't stop there. When members of the Tang Dynasty's imperial clan rebelled in Shandong and Hannan, Wu Zetian again turned to Renjie to handle the situation.
Right.
But this time, his dedication to justice would lead to a direct clash with the Empress's thirst for vengeance. So those rebellions in Shandong and Hannan really put Renjie in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Empress Wu, as you can imagine, was not messing around.
Right.
She wanted to crush any sign of dissent.
Yeah.
She issued orders for mass executions.
So you've got Wu Zetian wanting to make an example of anyone who challenged her.
Right.
And Renjie, this man who's known for his fairness and commitment to the law. Sounds like a recipe for a major showdown.
It was. Wu Zetian sent Renjie to Yuzhou,
Okay.
one of the regions hit hardest by the rebellion. And she gave him a list of thousands of people slated for execution.
Oh, wow.
But Renjie, being Renjie,
Right.
wasn't just going to blindly follow orders.
He actually took the time to investigate each case. Talk about a commitment to due process.
Oh, yeah.
What did he find?
Well, his investigation revealed that most of the people on the list were either innocent or had been forced into joining the rebellion.
Wow.
Only a tiny number were really deserving of the death penalty, according to the law.
So he was going up against not just the Empress's direct orders, but also, I imagine, like a wave of public fear and anger.
Oh, absolutely.
in the wake of these rebellions. What did he do?
He did what he always did. He stuck to his principles.
Yeah.
He basically put his own life on the line to plead with Wu Zetian to spare these people.
That's incredible. It's like something out of a movie. Did she listen?
She did.
Wow.
Which I think says a lot about the respect she had for Renjie's judgment,
Yeah.
even when it went against what she wanted.
Right.
Because of his stance, he saved thousands of lives.
He was a hero, standing up for justice, saving innocent people from, the executioner.
Yeah.
It's easy to see him as like a purely righteous figure
Right.
in this situation.
While his actions were heroic, I think his time in Yuzu also shows us the complicated realities of power.
Okay.
And the tough choices people in authority have to make.
Right.
It's not always just right and wrong.
What do you mean? Wasn't he doing the right thing by protecting those people?
Morally, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But while he was in Yuzu, he also clashed with the military forces that had been sent to put down the rebellion.
Oh.
They were demanding provisions from the local population, which was a huge problem.
Right.
Resources were already stretched thin.
So Renjie confronted the military as well. This guy never backed down.
He didn't. But this time, it went differently. Wu Zetian sided with the military.
Really?
She even demoted Renjie for a bit.
Wait, she demoted him after he saved all those lives?
It was a calculated move, a matter of political necessity.
Okay.
You see, Wu Zetian was consolidating her power,
Right.
and she needed to look strong,
Yeah.
maintain the military support.
Yeah.
Punishing them for demanding provisions would have sent the wrong message.
So even doing what seems like the right thing can sometimes have unintended consequences,
It can.
especially in a complex political situation like that. So Renjie was caught in this web of competing interests
Yeah.
and had to deal with a situation where there were no easy answers.
Exactly. His demotion wasn't personal. It was a strategic move by Wu Zetian
Okay.
to keep things stable. But her respect for Renjie is obvious.
Yeah.
She quickly reinstated him
Okay.
to an important position.
It seems like she recognized his value, even if she had to kind of sideline him for a while.
Yeah.
With Wu Zetian declaring herself empress, breaking with centuries of tradition, how did Renjie, this staunch Confucian scholar, reconcile himself to serving under her?
That's a question that continues to fascinate historians.
Yeah.
On one hand, he served her loyally
Right.
and effectively. But on the other hand, he never wavered in his commitment to Confucian principles, which, emphasized a patriarchal social order.
Right.
How could he support a female ruler and stay true to these beliefs?
It's like he was constantly trying to find this balance between his personal beliefs and the realities of the world around him. Did he see Wu Zetian as a legitimate ruler? Was he trying to influence her from within?
Those are great questions to think about.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Renjie so fascinating. He wasn't just a detective or a politician. He was a man of principle trying to navigate a world of constantly shifting power dynamics and moral ambiguities.
It's a reminder that history isn't always black and white.
It's not.
There are so many shades of gray, especially when we're talking about people who operated within these complex systems of power. We've seen his intelligence, his courage, his commitment to justice, but also the compromises he had to make. It's fascinating to see how he managed to stay true to himself in those incredibly complex political waters. It really makes you wonder, was he able to affect any real change within a system where the empress held absolute power?
That's the big question. Right?
Yeah.
Renjie was working within a system that was really designed to favor the ruler.
Right.
Even with all his influence and integrity, there were limits to what he could actually achieve.
It raises an interesting point. Even when he was doing good, like protecting people, upholding the law, was he ultimately just propping up a system that was often unjust at its core?
That's a really good question, and it's one for all of you listening to think about.
Yeah.
Was Renjie a true reformer, working to change the system from within? Or was he just a skilled operator who managed to create little pockets of justice in a system that was fundamentally flawed?
Yeah.
There's no easy answer.
It's these shades of gray, the lack of simple answers that I think make history so compelling.
They do.
We came into this deep dive wanting to uncover the real Renjie, the man behind the legendary detective stories. And I think we've done that.
I think so, too.
We've seen his brilliance, his courage, his compassion, and even his flaws. He was a complex individual who defied easy categorization.
He did. And that's the beauty of exploring history.
Yeah.
It's not just about memorizing names and dates. It's about uncovering these human stories filled with, triumphs and failures and moral dilemmas and questions that still resonate with us today.
Duan Renjie's story definitely does that.
Yeah.
It forces us to think about the nature of power, the limits of what one person can do, and the compromises we sometimes have to make when we're trying to achieve justice.
It also highlights how important it is to understand the historical context, right?
Right.
We can't judge figures from the past by today's standards.
Right.
We have to consider the world they lived in.
Yeah.
The challenges they faced, the choices they made within those limitations.
We've only scratched the surface of this fascinating life and the era in which he lived. If you're interested in what we've discussed today, I encourage you to learn more, do some research, and come to your own conclusions about de Renjie's legacy.
There's always more to learn, more perspectives to consider, and more connections to make. History is an ongoing journey of discovery, and de Renjie is just one of many incredible figures waiting to be rediscovered.
We're going to be looking at his relationship with Empress Wu Zetian.
Oh, yes, his relationship with Empress Wu.
A woman who...
a very powerful woman.
Yes, broke a lot of norms to become...
Broke a lot of norms, exactly.
The ruler that she was.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at a lot of different sources today to learn about this.
Yeah.
We've got biographical details, historical accounts,
Right.
even some proverbs that give us
Interesting. Yes, Proverbs.
a sense of the time.
Right.
So I guess the big questions that we want to try to answer today are, can a Confucian official truly support
Right.
a female ruler in a society that's so patriarchal?
Yeah, and Confucian society.
How did de Renjie deal with this treacherous world of politics that was going on under Empress Wu?
Right.
And then what makes his approach so different from other officials at the time?
Yes.
Definitely.
I think a good place to start might be by thinking about the society that de Renjie was operating within.
Oh, definitely. Yes. It was a world where the proverb, when a hen crows in the morning, it brings misfortune to the household.
Wow.
Really sort of sums up the attitude that people had about women in power.
Yeah.
Right. And Confucianism was so important.
Right.
To society at the time.
The bedrock.
The bedrock. Yes, exactly.
And that really emphasized this social hierarchy.
Right.
With men.
With men at the top.
Right at the top.
Yeah.
So how do you even begin to reconcile such deeply ingrained beliefs with having a female empress?
Right.
Like, how was that even possible? Well, it's interesting because de Renjie was a very pragmatic person.
Okay.
He could see that if there was a power vacuum, especially after Emperor Gaozong died, that things could get really chaotic.
Yeah.
And so Wu Zetian had all of these capabilities, and she was a force for stability in this volatile time.
Right. And we've got to remember,
yes,
the Tang Dynasty was vast.
Huge.
And keeping it unified was not an easy thing to do.
Definitely not.
So it sounds like he was prioritizing the good of the empire.
Yes. Even if it meant kind of pushing aside some of those traditional beliefs.
Was he always this supportive of Wu Zetian, though, or did his views change over time?
I think it's fair to say that his stance was complex.
Okay.
And it did evolve.
Okay.
So in the early days, he was a key advisor to her.
Right. So like a right-hand man, kind of.
Right-hand man, exactly.
Okay.
But as time went on,
yeah,
he started to focus more on making sure that the throne would eventually go back to the Liu family.
Okay.
To the rightful heirs.
So the rightful heirs, according to
tradition,
Tradition, yes.
Yeah.
So trying to support the current ruler, but also working towards a smooth transition back.
A smooth transition, exactly.
That's a really delicate balance to strike.
It is.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it really speaks to his political savvy.
For sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of political maneuvering.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's talk about de Renjie's rise to power.
Okay.
He did become prime minister.
He did.
But it wasn't exactly a quick rise, was it?
No, not at all.
No. Yeah.
He got the appointment in 691 AD.
Okay.
When he was 62 years old.
Okay, so that's
decades of service.
Before he reached the top spot.
Absolutely.
So this wasn't just like an easy climb ladder.
No, this was a journey.
A journey through this really complex world of court politics.
Right, and a dangerous one at that.
Oh, yes, very dangerous.
Considering the political climate under Empress Wu.
Yeah, this wasn't a peaceful time at all.
Right.
Empress Wu had to deal with 2 major rebellions during her reign. And you can imagine that made her pretty paranoid. Yeah, that would make anyone paranoid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So her response to that was this really harsh policy.
Okay.
It was better to wrongly kill 1,000 than to let one go.
Wow.
So you can imagine
Yeah.
what kind of climate of fear that created.
Right. So anyone could be accused.
Absolutely.
And the consequences were terrible.
Oh, yes. Dire consequences.
Yeah, it's a scary thought.
Yes, very much so.
And then you've got these figures like Lai Yunchen and Zhou Jing,
Right.
who are notorious for their cruelty.
Yes. Notorious for their ruthlessness.
These guys.
They were the architects
Yeah.
of a reign of terror.
Right. And there's that story about
Oh, yes.
the Legion Gate
In Luoyang.
in Luoyang becoming known as finished.
Finished.
Because-
Because if you were taken to that prison,
Right.
you were pretty much done for.
That gives you a real sense of the oppression and the fear
Absolutely.
that was going
A
on.
very palpable sense of dread.
Yeah, it wasn't just isolated incidents of cruelty. It was
Right.
like systemic.
Systemic cruelty.
Yeah.
And there's a story that I think really sums up
Okay.
this whole atmosphere of betrayal
Yeah.
and ruthlessness.
Okay.
So Lai Juyanchen,
Yeah.
he actually tricked and killed his own associate,
Wow.
Zhou Jing,
Really?
using the exact same method of torture
Wow.
that Zhu himself had suggested.
Oh, that's awful.
And it gave rise to this idiom, Qyun Ru Wang,
Okay.
which translates to invite the gentleman into the earthenware jar.
And that refers to
It
the...
refers to the torture method.
Got it.
Yeah.
So how did anyone, even someone as skilled as Renjie, survive in this environment?
Wow.
Like, how did he do that?
He was actually a target
He was...
of these cruel officials.
Okay, so how did he...
Lei Yunchen
Yeah.
was aiming for a high-ranking official,
Okay.
and he targeted Renjie on these trumped-up charges of treason,
Okay.
but as a secondary target.
Oh, so as a secondary target.
Right.
Okay.
And so Renjie,
Yeah.
instead of resisting and facing torture and a forced confession,
Right.
he chose a different path.
What did he do?
He tried to appeal to Empress Wu directly,
Oh, okay.
but he was in prison.
Right.
So that was a challenge.
Yeah, how do you even do that?
Well, there's this great story.
Okay.
It's known as the cotton-padded coat incident.
Okay.
And basically what he did was
Yeah.
he smuggled a petition to Wu Zetian inside of his winter coat,
Oh.
and he asked the jailer to have his son
Right.
take it home for washing.
Oh, so hoping that his son would find it.
Exactly, hoping his son would find the petition and deliver it.
That's so clever.
It is very clever.
But did it work?
Well, unfortunately, a crucial opportunity was missed.
Okay.
Wu Zetian, she sent a minister named Zhu Lin to
Okay.
review the case.
Yeah.
But Zhu Lin was absolutely terrified of Lai Yunchen,
Oh, no.
and so he dismissed
Oh,
Renjie's appeal.
wow.
And he even went so far as to forge signatures on the confession
Oh, no.
to really solidify those false charges.
So what happened?
Well, that's when a really unexpected hero enters the story.
Okay.
A child.
What?
The young son of Yu Sihui,
Okay.
who was another victim of Lai Yunchen.
Oh, wow.
He went directly to Wu Zetian.
What could a child even do?
Well, you might be surprised.
Okay.
He used logic.
Okay.
And he said,
Yeah.
if even a loyal person like Renjie could be forced to confess under torture,
Right.
then how can the system be trusted?
Wow.
So he was pointing out these flaws
Wow.
in a system that relied on forced confessions.
That's amazing
It is.
that a child would be able to do that.
Right.
So what did Wu Zetian do?
Well, it was a mixed bag.
Okay.
She didn't punish Lai Yunchen outright,
Okay.
but she demoted Renjie and others
Oh.
to local positions.
Okay, so a subtle acknowledgement.
A subtle acknowledgement, but
Yeah.
not true justice.
So not a complete victory,
No.
but it did save him
It
from
did.
something worse.
Yes.
So what happened to him after he was demoted?
Well, that's what's so remarkable about Renjie.
Okay.
He didn't become bitter.
Okay.
He embraced his new role
Okay.
as magistrate of Pinsing County
Okay.
with just as much integrity
Wow.
and dedication as he had always shown.
Okay.
And he became incredibly popular with the locals.
Wow.
They even built a shrine in his honor.
So even though he was removed from the center of power, his reputation
Yes.
continued to grow.
Yes, it did.
And his legacy was further solidified
Right.
with the creation of the Sanju Bei,
Yes.
which is a stele commemorating his achievements.
Yes, a very famous stele.
And it was written by Fan Zongyan
Right.
and calligraphed by Huang Tingdian.
Yes, two very prominent figures.
Really solidifing his
Okay.
legacy.
Yeah.
So even though he was removed, his impact
Yeah.
continued.
His impact continued.
Did he ever make it back to the capital?
He did.
He did.
And in a rather dramatic fashion.
Oh.
But we'll have to delve into that after a quick break.
That sounds good.
Stay with us. In 696 AD, the Khitans, they were a nomadic group.
Right.
They launched this rebellion
Okay.
on the northern border of the Tang Dynasty.
Okay, so they were creating trouble.
Yeah, they were creating a real problem.
Okay.
And so Empress Wu Zetian, she needed a capable leader.
Right.
And so she turned to Renjie.
Oh.
She appointed him as the prefect of Wu Zetian
Okay.
and gave him this really important task
Yeah.
of defending that region against the invaders.
It's a pretty big show of faith from Wu Zetian.
It is.
After everything that happened.
Yeah, you'd think
With Liunshin.
she'd be a bit hesitant.
Yeah, you'd think she'd be hesitant.
But maybe she realized
Yeah.
that his loyalty was really to the empire.
Mm.
And for Renjie, this was his chance
Right.
to prove himself once again.
Yeah.
Not just to the empress, but to the people.
Right, to the people he was tasked with protecting.
Exactly.
So how did he approach this challenge?
Well, Renjie,
Yeah.
he wasn't one to just blindly follow tradition. The common practice at the time
Yeah.
was to isolate the city,
Okay.
essentially using the population
Right.
as a shield
Wow.
while they fortify the walls.
So just leaving people outside?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
But Renjie completely rejected that approach.
Okay.
He saw the people as a key part
Right.
of the city's defenses,
Yeah.
not just expendable pawns.
That's a pretty big departure.
It is.
From the norm.
It really highlights his empathy,
Yeah.
his understanding of the human element
Right.
of warfare.
So did it work?
It did.
It did.
And it earned him even more admiration.
Okay.
Under his leadership, Wei Zhu was able to successfully defend against the Khitans.
Okay.
And the people were so grateful
Yeah.
for his compassion and leadership
Yeah.
that they built another shrine in his honor.
Another shrine. So
Yeah.
that's 2 shrines built by the people.
Exactly.
That's a powerful statement.
It really speaks to
Yeah.
the respect and admiration that he earned.
And it seems like his exile, while obviously difficult,
Yes.
actually strengthened his reputation.
Yeah, maybe that time away from the capital
Yeah.
really helped him to understand
Yeah.
what was truly important.
Like serving the people, upholding justice.
Exactly.
Ensuring stability.
Absolutely.
Okay, so after his success in Weizhou, what happened?
Well, he returned to the capital,
Okay.
and this time his return was triumphant.
Okay.
Wu Zetian recognized his accomplishments.
Yeah.
And she appointed him as prime minister for the second time.
Wow. Okay.
And this time their collaboration
Yeah.
went much more smoothly.
Okay.
Maybe because Renjie had a better understanding of the political landscape
Yeah.
and how to work with Wu Zetian's sometimes unpredictable nature.
Yeah, that exile was like a crucible
It was.
that forged him into an even stronger leader.
Right. And he came back
Yeah.
with this deep understanding of the people's needs
Yeah.
and the complexities of power.
And in one of the sources that we were looking at,
Yes.
there's this interesting analogy
Yes.
that compares different types of officials to different elements.
I love that analogy.
So there's Lu Rengui, who's described as being
Like the wind,
like the wind.
powerful but fleeting.
Okay.
And then you've got Li Zhaode.
Yeah.
He's like iron,
Like iron.
unyielding,
Right.
but potentially brittle.
Okay.
And then there's Wei Yanzong,
Okay.
like stone,
Like stone.
solid but prone to weathering over time.
I really like that.
It's a really good way of understanding
Yeah, these different approaches to leadership.
their strengths and their weaknesses.
So where does Renjie fit into all of this?
Well, he's described as being like water.
Like water.
Yes,
That's interesting.
it is.
I don't know if I would have thought of that.
Yeah.
So why is water a good representation?
Well, think about the qualities of water.
Okay.
It's adaptable.
Yeah.
It can flow around obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
It can wear down even the hardest rock
Right.
over time.
Yeah.
It can be gentle and powerful.
Yeah.
And when you think about Renjie's journey,
Yeah.
he navigated these really treacherous waters
Unintended.
of court politics.
Right.
He adapted to all these changing circumstances.
Right.
And he left this really lasting impact
Yeah.
on the Tang Dynasty.
So he wasn't rigid like iron
No,
and easily broken under pressure.
he was flexible.
Yeah.
He yielded when he needed to.
Yeah, but still stuck to his principles.
Absolutely.
And like water he wore away,
Right.
add injustice and corruption,
Yes.
subtly shaping the landscape of power.
Exactly.
And it seems like this water-like approach really served him well.
It did.
throughout his career.
It was more than just a concept. It was a way of life.
Can you give me some specific examples of this in action?
So think about how he responded to his demotion.
Okay.
Instead of becoming bitter, he channeled his energy into serving the people.
Right.
And they responded with this incredible respect.
Right. They built a shrine for him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's water finding its way through the cracks,
Yeah.
turning a negative into a positive.
It's a powerful reminder
It is.
that we have a choice in how we react
Absolutely.
to difficult situations.
Yes.
And then there's his decision to protect the city and the people of Beizhou.
Yes, rejecting that isolationist strategy. He knew that true strength came from protecting everyone.
Right, so that's water.
That's water flowing around the obstacle.
Finding a path that benefits everyone.
Exactly.
It's really refreshing.
It is.
To see that kind of perspective.
Yeah.
Especially in a world that's so often focused on
Power and conquest.
Yeah.
Power and conquest.
Exactly.
And think about how he was able to work with Empress Wu.
Yeah.
She was so powerful.
Yeah.
Not easily influenced.
But Renjie managed to influence her decisions.
He did.
And guide her towards policies that were good for the empire.
That's water wearing down the rock over time.
So he was a master of indirect influence.
He was.
Understanding that sometimes the best way to approach something is by working with the current.
Exactly.
Than against it.
And I think that's a key takeaway from Renjie's story.
What is it?
True leadership.
Yeah.
It isn't about domination or control.
Right.
It's about understanding human nature.
Right.
Adapting to circumstances.
Yeah.
And looking for those harmonious solutions.
So as we wrap up this exploration of Renjie's life and legacy, what's the question that you want our listeners?
I think a really good question is,
Yeah.
how can we all incorporate a bit of Renjie's water-like wisdom into our own lives?
Right.
How can we be more adaptable, more resilient,
Yeah.
more aware of the needs of others?
It's a good question to ask.
It is.
For our own personal growth.
Absolutely.
But also for our communities and the world.
For the world around us.
Yeah, Renjie's story isn't just an account of something that happened in the past.
It's a call to action.
It's a call to action to become.
Yes, to cultivate.
Yeah, to cultivate those water-like qualities.
Yes.
And work towards a more harmonious and just world.
I love that.
It's a great reminder.
It is.
That even when we face challenges and setbacks,
yeah,
we can choose to be like water.
Right.
Adaptable, persistent, and a force for positive change.
Beautifully said.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder Renjie's enduring legacy and what we can all learn from him.
Until next time.
Keep exploring, keep learning,
Yeah.
and keep the spirit of Renjie alive.
In your own unique way.
So we're back, and wow, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
This Renjie.
A fascinating character.
He's really got me thinking. So we talked about this idea of Renjie being like water, right? Adapting and flowing through all the challenges of the Tang Dynasty.
Right.
But how did that actually look?
Right. How did that actually manifest?
Yeah, like in his action.
Well, think back to his time as magistrate.
Okay.
In Pixie County.
Right.
He was demoted, remember?
Unjustly.
Unjustly.
Yeah.
But he didn't let that get him down.
He didn't get resentful.
No, he focused on serving the people.
Yeah. And they loved him for it.
They built a shrine for him.
Right. It's like that water.
Exactly.
Finding a way through the cracks.
Turning a negative into a positive.
It's a good reminder for us. Like we can choose.
We have that choice.
How we respond.
To adversity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then think about Wu Zetian.
Oh, yes. Wu Zetian.
When he was defending it.
He refused to sacrifice the people.
Yeah, he didn't want to use them as a shield.
Exactly. He saw the importance of protecting everyone.
That's the water flowing around.
Around the obstacle.
Yeah.
Finding that path that benefits everyone.
He really seems to get people.
He understands that human element. And then there's Empress Wu.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how did he even manage?
Well, she was a powerful figure.
So powerful.
Not easily swayed.
Yeah, but he still managed to kind of...
He did.
Guide her decisions.
He influenced her policies.
Right, towards things that were good for the empire.
That's that water wearing down the rock over time.
Yeah, like slow and steady.
Persistent.
Yeah.
Creating change without force.
So he was like a master of...
He was his direct influence.
He understood that sometimes...
Yeah.
You have to work with the current.
not against it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a really important...
It is
I'm
a
not-
key takeaway.
From his story.
It's not about domination or control.
Right. It's about understanding people.
Understanding people.
Understanding situation.
Accepting.
Adapting and finding those...
Harmonious.
Yeah, those good solutions for everyone.
Right.
So as we finish up today,
Yes, as we wrap up.
what is it that you really want our listeners?
Well, I hope they're thinking about
Yeah.
how they can use...
This Renjie water-like wisdom in their own lives.
How can we be more like Renjie?
Right. How can we be more adaptable,
Yeah, more resilient.
more attuned to the needs of others?
That's a good question.
It's a question worth exploring.
Not just for us,
No, not just for us,
but for everyone.
but for our communities, for the world.
It's like Renjie's story.
Yeah,
It's more than just a history lesson.
it's a call to action.
It is a call to action
To be better.
to cultivate those good qualities
Those water-like qualities.
and work towards a better world.
A more harmonious world.
Yeah, so it's a good reminder,
It is.
even when things are tough.
Even when we face challenges,
Yeah, we can choose.
we can choose to be like water.
Adaptable
Persistent.
and a force for good.
Beautifully said. Renjie, the Tang Dynasty official.
Exactly. He's often compared to water.
Water.
Yeah, for his unique blend of strength and flexibility.
I see. I see.
He was a master at navigating, tricky political situations.
I get it. Like political waters.
Right. And we have some lecture excerpts on Renjie's political wisdom.
Oh, cool. This is going to be good.
I think you'll be pretty amazed by his strategic genius.
I'm ready. Let's hear it.
So this water metaphor, it really shines a light on Renjie's approach to power.
Okay, how so?
Well, think about water.
All right.
It can be so powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Like it carves canyons.
Exactly. And powers those hydraulic presses.
Right. Super strong.
But it's also adaptable. It flows around obstacles. It changes its form.
Yeah, it goes with the flow.
That's Renjie.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful image.
It is, right. But how did he actually embody this water wisdom?
Especially in Wu Zetian's court.
Yeah, exactly. She was known for being ambitious.
And having a very firm grip on power.
For sure. So how did Renjie thrive in that kind of environment?
And stay loyal to the Tang Dynasty.
Right. It's remarkable. One story that really shows this is about his imprisonment.
Oh, tell me about this.
So he was falsely accused, right?
Uh-huh.
But he confessed to the charges.
Wait, he confessed, even though he was innocent?
Yep.
That doesn't make any sense.
It seems counterintuitive.
It really does.
But this shows his adaptability.
Okay, I'm listening.
He understood that staying alive was the most important thing.
So he could fight another day.
Exactly. By confessing, he made sure he wasn't totally eliminated.
I guess that makes sense.
It's like that saying, as long as the Green Mountains remain...
There will always be firewood.
Yeah, that's the one. Renjie knew that to reach his goals.
We had to ride out the storm.
Exactly. Even if it meant making a move that seemed like a compromise.
So he was playing the long game.
He was. He was biding his time.
Very smart.
Yeah, he was being pragmatic.
Recognizing that going head-to-head with Wu Zetian wouldn't help him.
It wouldn't achieve his ultimate purpose. And remember...
His loyalty was to the Tang Dynasty.
Yeah, which Wu Zetian had usurped.
Right. So Renjie's goal was to bring back the Tang.
Exactly. And that meant being strategic.
And subtle.
Yes, it sounds like he was walking a tightrope.
Serving the Empress while secretly trying to, undermine her dynasty.
That's a good way to put it. How did he manage that?
Well, Renjie understood something about Wu Zetian.
What's that?
She was ambitious, yeah.
Definitely.
But she wasn't reckless. She
Interesting.
really valued stability and good governance.
So he made himself useful.
Exactly. He became an advisor she could depend on.
Someone she could rely on.
For sound advice.
And
He even earned her respect.
affection.
The lecture mentions she called him Guolao.
Oh, like a nickname.
Yeah, kind of endearing.
That's interesting.
And during their travels, she always made sure he had his own room.
Oh, wow. Special treatment.
A rare privilege.
It sounds like he was very carefully balancing things.
Gaining Wu Zetian's trust while working towards the Tang restoration.
Right. Did he see those as, conflicting loyalties?
Not necessarily. He knew Wu Zetian's rule provided stability.
For the time being.
Exactly. He supported her effectively.
But always with that bigger goal in mind.
The return of the Tang Dynasty.
And how was he going to achieve that?
He knew he had to convince Wu Zetian to name her son as her successor.
Lu Xun, the rightful Tang heir.
Right.
That must have been incredibly difficult.
Yeah, especially since Wu Zetian had her own ambitions.
For her own family, the Wu clan.
So convincing her to basically hand power back to the Tang lineage?
Not easy at all.
Definitely not. But here again, you see Renjie's water wisdom.
Okay, tell me more.
He knew brute force wouldn't work.
Of course not.
He had to be like water,
Persistent.
wearing down resistance.
Finding those weak spots.
Exactly.
And, Wu Zetian was superstitious.
Oh, really?
She believed in dreams and omens.
So Renjie used that to his advantage. I knew it. He sounds like a very clever guy.
He was. One great example is the parrot dream story.
Ooh, a parrot dream. This sounds interesting. Tell me everything.
All right, so Wu Zetian had this dream.
Okay.
And in it, she saw a parrot.
A parrot?
Yes, but with a broken wing.
A broken wing? What does that even mean?
Well, Renjie saw his chance.
To interpret the dream.
Yes. He told Wu Zetian that the dream meant she was missing one of her wings.
Her wings. Was this some kind of metaphor?
It was. He was talking about her son, Lycian.
The one in exile.
Exactly.
So he used her own dream to advocate for his return.
Never right.
Super clever. Playing right into her belief system.
He suggested that bringing Lycian back would make her whole again.
Like a parrot with two healthy wings?
Precisely.
Wow. He was good. And it wasn't just dreams. He also used, well, a game.
What game?
It was called Shuanglu. It's like chess.
Interesting.
In another dream, Wu Zetian was losing at Shuanglu.
Oh, no. What did that mean?
Renjie had a clever interpretation for that, too.
I bet he did.
He said it meant she wasn't valuing her son enough.
Her son.
Yes, Lycian. He said he was her most important piece.
They're like on the board of life.
Exactly.
He really knew how to read a situation.
And use everything to his advantage.
That's for sure.
But he didn't stop there. He also appealed to Wu Zetian's sense of legacy.
Her legacy.
And her religious beliefs.
Okay.
She reminded her about something important.
What was that?
That if she chose a member of the Wu clan as heir, something bad might happen.
Oh, no. What?
She might be forgotten in ancestral sacrifices.
Oh, wow. That's a big deal.
Right. Especially for someone so concerned with her place in history.
And the afterlife.
Exactly.
So it's like a multi-pronged approach.
Emotional appeals, dream interpretations, and maybe even a bit of fear.
To persuade her.
Yeah, it was pretty clever.
Was he the only one trying to sway Wu Zetian?
Or did others also see the need for the Tang to return? Well, Renjie was super important in all this. But he wasn't working alone.
Oh, really? So there were others who wanted to restore the Tang.
Yeah, the lecture mentions this other minister, Jishu.
Jishu, okay, so how did he try to convince Wu Zetian?
Well, Jishu, he was a sharp guy. He understood that power wasn't just about, official positions.
I see. So it was about more than just who had the highest rank.
Right. And he knew that Wu Zetian had these two young lovers.
Lovers. Oh, you mean Chengzong and Zhang Yizi.
Yes, them. And they had a lot of influence over her.
Even though they weren't high-ranking officials?
Exactly. They had her ear, So Jishu saw an opportunity.
To go through them.
To persuade them, yeah.
But wasn't that risky? Wu Zetian could be pretty ruthless.
True, but Jishu was smart about it. He didn't threaten them or anything.
So how did he approach them?
He appealed to their sense of, self-preservation.
Self-preservation? What do you mean?
He made them think about the future. What would happen to them when Wu Zetian died?
Oh, I see. She was a lot older than them.
Exactly. And their influence depended entirely on her favor.
So when she was gone, they'd be left with nothing.
Precisely. They were in a very precarious position.
It's like a house of cards.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So Jishu offered a solution.
What was that?
Support Lycian as the crown prince.
Ah, I see. So that they would be on the good side of the future emperor.
And ensure their own safety and continued influence.
Wow, that's some strategic thinking. Did it work?
It did. The brothers agreed to support Lycian.
Amazing. So did Wu Zetian buy it?
Well, she wasn't fooled.
Yeah.
She knew that Jishu was behind their sudden change of heart.
Oh.
But instead of getting angry, she summoned him to court.
She wanted to confront him directly.
It seems that way. It must have been a very tense moment.
I bet. What did Jishu do?
He used the opportunity to make a passionate plea for Lycian's return.
He just went for it.
He did. And he argued that it was in Wu Zetian's best interest, too.
To bring her son back.
Yes. He said that restoring the rightful heir would bring stability to the empire.
And make the transition of power smoother.
Exactly.
Wow. So we have Renjie working through dreams and omens, Jishu working through Wu Zetian's inner circle.
It was like a multi-pronged attack.
And they both emphasized the benefits of restoring the Tang Dynasty.
Long-term stability, the rightful heir, all that.
Did all this pressure finally work on Wu Zetian?
It seems so. The lecture says she eventually gave in.
She agreed to bring back Lijian.
Yeah, from exile.
Huh.
But even then, Renjie didn't relax.
Oh, why not? Lijian's was coming back.
True, but Renjie knew appearances were important.
I see what you mean.
Just bringing Lijian back wasn't enough.
He needed to make sure his position was secure.
Exactly. And that's where, you guessed it, his water wisdom comes in again.
Tell me everything.
Well, when Wu Zetian presented Lijian to Renjie, it was all very casual.
Just like, hey, here's your son back.
Pretty much. But Renjie knew they needed something more.
Something more formal.
Much more. He demanded a grand public ceremony.
A ceremony for what?
To welcome Lijian back officially as the crown prince.
So everyone would see and know.
That Lijian was back and that he was the heir.
No more ambiguity.
No more questions. It was a brilliant move.
It really was. He made it much harder for Wu Zetian to change her mind later.
Or for her Wu clan nephews to try and take over.
It's like he was always thinking 10 steps ahead.
He was a master strategist. He understood that political power is fluid.
Like water.
Exactly. You have to adapt, maneuver, seize every opportunity.
And his goal was always the restoration of the Tang Dynasty.
Even if it meant working within the court that had taken it over.
It's such a fascinating story. But sadly, Renjie died before seeing the Tang fully restored.
That's right. And the lecture mentioned a coup.
The one that finally brought the Tang Dynasty back to power.
Yes. It makes you wonder what role Renjie might have played.
Yeah, it makes you think, did he, plan for this?
Quite possible, right?
I mean, he spent years, building connections, advocating for the Tang, placing people in important positions.
Just laying the groundwork.
Exactly. It's like, what if this was all part of his plan, even though he wouldn't be alive to see it?
Like a long-term strategy? It's pretty amazing to think about.
It is. But if that's true, it kind of makes you wonder about Renjie's philosophy.
His political philosophy.
Yeah. Like, was he okay with using any means necessary?
Even violence.
Yeah. To achieve his goals.
That's a tough one. Historians still debate this.
They do.
Yeah. Some say he was a pragmatist, adapting to the situation.
Like water.
Right. And don't forget, he lived in a chaotic time.
Wu Zetian coming to power. That was a huge shift.
Exactly. It showed that traditions could be broken.
So maybe Renjie realized something.
That restoring the Tang Dynasty might need more than just cleverness.
More than just words.
Maybe.
It's a good reminder. History isn't always simple.
No, it's messy. Full of twists and turns.
Even the most principled people, they have to make tough choices.
Right. It's all about navigating power and the possibility of conflict.
It's what makes Renjie so interesting.
He wasn't just a strategist. He was a complex person.
Dealing with real dilemmas and a huge responsibility.
He wanted justice. He wanted order. But he knew those things weren't easy to get.
It's a really human story.
It is. So, thinking back on Renjie, what can we learn from him?
That's a good question.
I think, first, there's that water wisdom. It's a lesson for us today.
About adapting and being resilient.
Exactly. True strength isn't about being rigid. It's about being flexible.
Going with the flow, but not losing sight of what you want.
That's so important even now. The world keeps changing.
Throwing us curveballs.
Right. We need to adapt. Think strategically.
I like that. What else?
Renjie also shows us how important it is to understand power.
How it works. Who has it?
He was incredible at reading people, understanding what they wanted.
And using that to his advantage.
To get things done. He knew that to make real change, you sometimes have to work within the system.
Even if the system is messed up.
Yeah. He was a realist.
He was also really persistent, never gave up on his goal.
Even when it seemed impossible.
Bringing back the Tang Dynasty. Like water, slowly wearing down resistance.
And eventually changing the course of history. That's a great way to put it.
Anything else?
One last thing. I think Renjie makes us think about the ethics of leadership.
Like, what's the right way to lead?
Yeah. And how do we pursue justice? He reminds us that good goals don't always have easy solutions.
Sometimes you have to make hard choices.
The path to a better future isn't always clear.
It's a complicated legacy.
But it's fascinating. Renjie, the water official.
He gives us so much to think about.
About human nature. About power. about finding a balance between your principles and what's actually possible.
This has been such an interesting deep dive.
It really makes you want to learn more about this period.
I know, right? About Wu Zetian, the coup, everything.
So much to explore.
I hope our listeners feel the same way. Renjie's story is like a window into another world. A world of political intrigue, ambition, and that age-old fight for power. So we're going to uncover kind of how Renjie navigated all that, the whole mess.
Those treacherous waters.
And the cool part, we'll see how his strategies back then can actually help us navigate, like, ANY workplace today.
Oh, it's surprising how relevant his story is, even now. I mean, his main goal was to restore the Tang Dynasty.
Right, get them back in power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But with Empress Wu Zetian calling the shots, well, that was a tough task.
Yeah, I bet. Like playing chess against a grandmaster or something.
Oh, at least. And one of Renjie's first big moves, he made sure Li Xian, the rightful heir, got named Crown Prince.
Smart move, but probably just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Absolutely. He still had to deal with Wu Zetian's nephews, the infamous two Wus.
Ah, yes, the two was always causing trouble, weren't they?
Oh, they had ambitions of their own, that's for sure. Wu Changzi, now he was impulsive, power-hungry. Like when Li Jian became crown prince, story goes, Wu Changzi was so curious he got sick and died.
Wow. Talk about not handling things well. Definitely not a good workplace strategy.
No, definitely not. But then there's Wu Sanzi, much more cunning.
Uh-oh. Sounds dangerous.
He was. Master of playing the long game. Seemed like he didn't care about power, but behind the scenes.
He was pulling strings.
Oh, absolutely. Building influence. Renjie knew he was the bigger threat.
So Renjie had to, like, tailor his approach for each of them.
Exactly. Like today, you wouldn't talk to your boss the same way you talk to a coworker.
Right. Got to read the room, figure out how everyone ticks.
Exactly what Renjie did. He understood people. And then there's the whole time factor. Seems like his plan was to just outlast Wu Zetian.
Wait her out, basically.
Yeah, but she was, well, a force of nature. I mean, there are stories about her white hair turning black, new teeth growing in.
What? Really?
Now, the teeth were probably just wisdom teeth popping up late.
Oh, okay.
But you see the symbolism, right? Like defying age, clinging to power. She had the best health care, lived a lavish life.
And kept everyone on their toes.
You could say that. Renjie must have realized waiting might not work.
Like being stuck in a job, hoping things will change, but realizing you got to make a move.
Exactly. And Renjie was all about proactive planning. So faced with his time crunch, he came up with a brilliant solution. He started training successors, like building a whole team of mini Renjies.
Wow, that's thinking ahead.
Oh, yeah. He picked guys like Zhang Jianzi, Yuan Fan, Yuan Shuji, Ku Swanwei.
All stars, huh?
Each known for honesty, integrity. And they hated how the two was operated.
So it wasn't just mentoring, it was building a whole faction.
You got it. Like building your network and your career, people who have your back.
Good.
This is where we see Renjie's genius.
Like practical lessons we can learn from.
All these challenges, never gave up. Think about it. You ever had a tough boss or a project that just seemed impossible?
Oh, yeah.
Renjie's perseverance. Powerful example. Having that long-term vision commitment.
Did he have one of those inspirational posters like, hang in there, kitty?
Maybe. But jokes aside, he also had incredible emotional intelligence, knew how to read people, who to trust, how to persuade.
Like being the best communicator in the room.
Absolutely. Just as important today as back then. It's not just toughness, it's being smart about people.
Like in a meeting, knowing when to push your ideas, when to listen.
Exactly. Renjie was known for being what they called water-like.
Water-like?
Yeah, principled, but flexible, adaptable without compromising his values. Not rigid, but not spineless either.
So, like, imagine you've got this tough client, right? Super demanding.
You can meet their needs, stay true to your company, your own ethics.
Find that balance, that flow.
Exactly. It makes you think, where do you fall on that spectrum? Rigid or adaptable? How's that affecting your work?
Good question.
And as Renjie's story goes on, we'll see how that water-like approach helped him navigate some truly crazy times.
So, Renjie's got his plan, his team. Seems like he's got things under control.
But then, bam, he gets really sick.
Oh, no. A setback.
Now, his time's running out. So what does he do? Calls a secret meeting.
With his successors, those mini Renjie.
The inner circle. And this is where you see Renjie's thinking ahead, like 10 steps ahead.
What do you mean?
He knows he can't control what happens after he's gone, right?
Right.
But he can prepare them, like a CEO doing succession planning, but for an empire.
High stakes. So who's at this meeting?
Well, not everyone. Two guys, Jinghui and Kui Xuanwei. Good guys, but
Loose lips.
a bit. Couldn't keep a secret. And that's fascinating too, right?
Shows how much trust mattered to Renjie. Like, one wrong word could blow everything up.
Confidentiality is key, even today. Leaks, gossip.
Sink careers.
Exactly. So what's the message to this trusted few?
What does he tell them?
2 scenarios. 1, smooth transition. Wu Zetian dies. Legion takes over, no problem.
If ideal outcome.
But Renjie knows it might not be that easy. Scenario 2, big power struggle.
Against those who want to keep Li Shane out.
You got it. Wu Sanzi, we know about him. But also, 2 new players. The 2 Zhangs.
There are always more players. Who are these guys?
Zhang Yizi and Zhang Chengzong brothers. Gained influence over Wu Zetian in her later years.
Ah, so they're like the new favorites. This is getting complicated.
And they weren't exactly known for their ethical behavior, shall we say.
So Renjie's giving his team a heads up, like things might get ugly.
More like, here's the roadmap to what might happen, foreshadowing the chaos that's coming.
And he tells them to be ready for anything, even a coup, if it comes to that.
To protect the Tang Dynasty. Heavy stuff. Can you imagine being one of those guys?
Yeah, the weight of history on your shoulders, like being told to save your company no matter what.
And it shows how much he believed in them. They were capable, and they shared his goal. That's leadership.
So what happens next?
Renjie dies. Wu Zetian, surprisingly, she's devastated.
Really? I thought they were rivals.
Politically, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But there was respect there. She even said the court felt empty without him.
Huh. But I bet those power-hungry types saw their chance.
Oh, absolutely. Especially the 2 Zhanes. They became even more influential, controlling access to the Empress.
Like gatekeepers whispering in her ear.
Classic power move. And you know what that reminds me of?
What?
A story from the Qin Dynasty. This guy, Xiao Gao, he manipulated the emperor, forged documents.
I messed things up good.
Led to the dynasty's collapse. Renjie's followers, they saw the 2 Zhangs doing the same thing.
History repeating itself.
They feared it. And that's why the Shenlong coup wasn't just ambition, it felt necessary to them.
Like, we have to act or it'll all fall apart.
Exactly. And even Li Xian, the crown prince, he was hesitant at first.
He didn't want to go against his own mom.
It's complicated. But Renjie's guys convinced him. Action was needed.
So the coup happens, they succeed, like Tang Dynasty's restored.
Victory. But makes you think, right?
About what?
Renjie, he respected Wu Zetian, understood balance. Would he have supported a coup while she lived?
Tough question. He was loyal, but also knew the consequences.
Means versus ends. Loyalty.
Hmm.
And how a situation changes everything.
A win, but maybe not the way Renjie would chosen.
That's leadership in a nutshell, isn't it? No easy answers, just tough choices.
Gray areas. Speaking of which, let's talk about Renjie the Divine Detective.
Ah, yes. The Sherlock Holmes of ancient China.
Everyone thinks he was this brilliant detective solving all these crazy cases.
Except there's no historical evidence for it.
Wait, seriously? So all those stories are made up?
Pretty much. It all comes from this guy, Robert van Gulik.
Who's that?
Dutchman, 20th century, loved Chinese culture, wrote a bunch of Judge Dee novels.
Based on Renjie?
Loosely. He took some old detective stories, added his own spin, and bam. Renjie the Detective was born.
So, like, fan fiction that became super famous.
Exactly. Shows how powerful a good story can be. Shapes how we see history, even if it's not accurate.
Makes you wonder, what would Renjie himself think about all this? He'd probably be like, wait, what? I didn't do any of that.
Right. But think about it. It's the detective archetype, right? Smart, solves puzzles, brings justice. People love that.
Oh, totally. And this Van Gulik guy, he knew how to write a good story, hook people in.
Oh, yeah, he was talented. Created this whole world around Renjie, even if, historically...
It wasn't quite right.
A bit of a stretch, let's say.
Yeah.
But it makes you think, would Renjie be upset? Or maybe.
Secretly flattered?
Maybe. Like, hey, even centuries later, folks are still talking about me. Maybe he'd see the connection, you know?
Between being a detective and a politician.
Yeah. Court intrigue back then. You had to observe, strategize, figure out who was lying.
Like piecing together clues.
Exactly. So we can have a laugh about the historical mix-up, but...
There's still a good lesson there.
The stories we tell, they matter. They get us excited about history, make us think.
It's like sometimes a fun story teaches you more than a boring textbook, right?
For sure. It's finding those connections that make history come alive. And isn't that what we've been doing here?
Yeah, we've seen how Renjie dealt with tough people, built a team, stuck to his values.
And those lessons, they apply to us today.
Oh yeah, it's like Renjie's giving us career advice from beyond the grave.
And beyond the detective novels, he reminds us that history, it's not just facts and dates, it's
the stories.
The stories we tell. The real ones, the imagined ones. All of it helps us understand the world, understand ourselves.
So wrapping up our Renjie deep dive, it's a question for everyone out there. Which Renjie is more real?
The historical figure? Or the one in the books? No easy answer. But hopefully it makes you think a bit.
Maybe even go check out some other historical figures, see what stories they've inspired.
That's what it's all about. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.
If you found this discussion useful, maybe learned something new, definitely hit that subscribe button. We do these deep dives regularly, exploring valuable ideas.
We appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.